Nyangchi Chimbar Zodan Hingmi Chang Zonar Munam Chimbar Ngam Jada Bakar Tarngam Sando Shirmar Dor Tomba Tukje Chang La Ki Sham Sar Nichan Rubar Tsiringi Shangam Sa Jakar Tukji Shandam Yelarman Jimmy Panzo Jalak Soran De Gon Get Toban Pora Shinjir Lo Gon Get Toban Pora Shin Gon Get Toban Pora Shinjir Lo
The unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in billions of eons. I now see it, hear it, receive it, and uphold it, and avow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning in order to liberate all sentient beings. Let us generate the supreme Bodhisattva.
ndata yedam da yongsur zobr jibar lag samma gonde yongsuk tongren jirwa lag kwar sarwa shamba rigjiwa ndata ne yedam da lidang chuk shir yang pongwer manje ro deni jondan de shanju sangwa chembo shamba la ndirkji sor to jondan de shanju sangwe thagbe ᱛᱚᱵᱮ ᱠᱚᱱ ᱡᱟᱜᱟ ᱪᱩᱛ ᱫᱚ ᱫᱟᱱᱟᱨ ᱝᱟᱵᱡᱟ ᱛᱟᱢᱟ ᱛᱟᱢᱵᱤ ᱪᱩ ᱨᱱᱟᱵᱨᱤᱱ ᱡᱤᱜᱵᱮ ᱪᱮᱱᱟ ᱪᱮ ᱢᱟᱨᱱᱟ ᱡᱟ ᱢᱟᱨᱢᱩᱛ ᱵᱟ ᱫᱮᱵᱨ ᱭᱚᱝᱥ ᱛᱟᱨᱣᱟᱱ ᱡᱮᱨᱣᱟ ᱞᱟᱜᱟ ᱛᱮᱨᱠᱤ ᱥᱚᱨᱟ ᱛᱟᱢ ᱪᱚᱱᱫᱤᱱ ᱫᱮᱜᱤ ᱥᱟᱱᱪᱩ ᱥᱟᱱᱣᱟ ᱪᱮᱢᱵᱚ ᱥᱟᱢᱵᱟᱞᱟᱱ ᱫᱨᱠᱤᱛ ᱠᱟᱨᱪᱟᱨ ᱛᱚ ᱥᱟᱢᱵᱟ ᱥᱟᱱᱪᱩ ᱥᱟᱱᱣᱟ ᱛᱟᱜᱵ ᱜᱟᱱᱡ ᱪᱩ ᱡᱮᱫᱟᱱ ᱫᱟᱱᱟᱨ ᱝᱟᱵᱡᱟ ᱛᱟᱢᱟ ᱛᱟᱢᱵᱤ ᱪᱩ ᱡᱤᱜᱵᱤ ᱪᱮ ᱢᱟᱨᱢᱩᱛ ᱡᱟ ᱢᱟᱨᱢᱮ ᱵᱨ ᱫᱮᱵᱨ ᱭᱚᱝᱥ ᱛᱟᱨᱣᱟᱱ ᱡᱮᱨو ᱡᱮᱠᱟᱱ ᱡᱮᱱᱟ ᱫᱟᱠᱟᱱ ᱪᱷᱨᱣᱟᱞᱟ ᱥᱩᱥᱩᱨ ᱛᱚᱵᱟᱫᱟᱱ ᱥᱟᱱᱪᱩ ᱥᱟᱱᱣᱟ ᱛᱟᱜᱵി ᱜᱟᱱᱡ ᱡᱟᱱᱡᱤ 니바 마글랑와다 mzabshiji kimdang longmowe kimla martawadang yidda mogongwe tsukpongwarte shanbe shanchu sanhui chu shanchu sanhui takbi chu jibon dadagdang danar ngabja tamala dambi chu nambarin jigbi tse marmad jang marme bar dewa yongsa tarwan gyoro shanba zhanyan shanchu sanhui takbi gangzak chu jidang dana ngabja tamala tambi chur nambaran jigbi tse marmat jang marme birdevar tarwan yerde jikang jena tuban yungi semchin yongsor pongwadang kur mabdawadang vemti nemar temba tang dag darwadang jiwadang jigni kib jorwala zombar te shamba shansu sangwe takbe gangzak chu jibo te dagdang danar ngabja tamala tambi chur nambaran jigbi tse marmat jang marme birdevar yongsa tarwan yoro shamba ter tawena shansu sangwe takbe rigjiwo mor ngabja tama la tambi chur nambaran jigbi tse marme jang marme bar devar yongsa tarwan gerwan dobadang leji driba tam chida zapar sheparan dope ndunzi la maggawadang gombadang nagdang vemtalang nebadang semchin rigba metjang mufsunda yongsor pongwa dakkan chirwa tokjang janjin chirwa mansurwa dang marma wala gawa dang shiribji baru do shimba nebala gawra shawo karte te semchang jantagla da chobrando be sem tiena ti zangzang me be semla ne de chuji jimba jimbar shawo shamba nishibon dadagna zangzang me be chuji jimba Nipa gama kurtu mundo pe chuji jimba kanyamba ti panyo yende nishibo kanjina ndartate tamba dang dambaran jerwadang loju dang dambaran jerwadang ulo dang dambaran jerwadang tamba dang dambaran jerwadang shirab dang dambaran jerwadang jirten lendi bi shirab jisir tokbaran jerwadang ndo chik chungwaran jerwa dang jirdang chungwaran jerwadang tamik chungwaran jerwadang deki le te laglag marni baran jerwadang sanjib chundan der namji gombaran jerwadang mamayin ba te namna chungwaran jerwadang har namne te lag zibjit kibaran jerwadang mumzawar namji te laglag ni baran manjerwadang ti mzawar nam mapchi baran jerwadang tsik zumbaran jerwadang ti manjigba tobaran jerwadang yudab devar mangwaran jerwadang kebe baran jerwadang ti chujimba ti jisa chambar shawago baran jerwad te shamba chu nishibo te dag zangzang mebe chujimba jimber niba dang kurto yongsur pang jang ku dang ze la rewa me bar pambi ngubu lan jowi sim gin mache bar yangda chujimbar jimba kanyamba te i panyon yono shamba zangzang mebe semdar dambi chuji jimba la ajayang panyon nishi yote nishibo kanjena tir popa markiwe kiwaran gerwadang tir popa kiwa chud mazaran gerwadang zong tobar shabi shirda di sim changwaran gerwadang tsag chungi semchin mangbo takka tom shibaran gerwadang tsag chungi semchin tir namla semchin nam tela kibar rimjob shibaran gerwadang likir domba tobaran gerwadang ngakar domba tobaran gerwadang ikir domba tobaran gerwadang nganjun jikbalin davran gerwadang jandag gab jindan chiwi ti shibaran gerwadang Gerada, Pegir Gora Tamchi Chudam Tumbe Sark Jubaran Gerada, the Exhibit Simpson tumbo takki semsim tumbo takki kyang mabzod na parwa takarta jirmu wangbo zirgi nombarin gerwa da thagbo samba basum zogbarin zambarin gerwa da jagne da hamtong tobarin gerwa da ka shaba yang da yang ka shaba ta yong sur zogbarin gerwa 당 존립 잠발의 용선 년벌 먼저와 당 담비 주종을 연결와 당 실물 도부 년도 넘버 연결와 당 상주성 조바 담전 넘버 연결와 때 샴바 주니시 보테도는 zanzang 비셈다 담비 주지 좀바 파요 연호 샴바 슈미디기 제나 상주성 덕바 zanzang도 지비 주 좀바 이런 연결라 zanzang 메바는 zanzang 니시보테 다가 니시보테도你是不得到是不是在这儿？好的。先把去年是不得到脏脏没被xem到，但被去季人把盘用人比盘用一弄。那我们下面继续讲这个。
Now let us continue with our class. Our class on the Sutra on generating the supreme aspiration of bodhicitta. This sutra was translated into Chinese back in Tang Dynasty by Bodhiruchi. I indeed feel that Bodhiruchi's translation is very good. On one hand, it's very easy to cross-reference with the Tibetan version. It's very similar in terms of the content. On the other, his translation is very easy to understand. I think you're all quite aware of it. In our previous class, we've already studied the 13 great vows, where the Buddha said that if the Bodhisattvas want to purify their negative karmas and karmic obscurations, they have to uphold such 13 great vows. Now let us continue. Over here now, Maitreya Bodhisattva asked the Buddha, saying that, World-honored one, if there are noble men, noble women, were to uphold these great vows, would they be able to attain the perfect Bodhi without retrogress? Now, the Tibetan version is a little bit different than the translation in Chinese, but the meaning is similar, where it says that if the noble men and noble women were to uphold these great 13 vows, would they be able to progress along the perfect path without retrogress? Are they going to retrogress, or are they going to attain the perfect Bodhi? But the meaning is very similar. Anyhow, over here at the time, the Buddha then told Maitreya Bodhisattva, saying that if there are noble men and noble women upholding the great vows on the path of Bodhisattva, the 13 great vows, if they were to uphold the vows even at the cost of their lives, they'd rather lose their lives than lose their vows. I contemplated upon myself afterwards and thinking that I think this is indeed quite difficult. But for the practitioners who are genuine and who have great resolve to practice on the path of Bodhisattva, on the Bodhisattva's path, in fact, their vows are very steadfast and they have great perseverance. They would never give up their vows. I really hope that all of us, all of our audience here, should also contemplate upon it. The Buddha over here, on behalf of all the Bodhisattva path practitioners, he said that if the practitioners would uphold the vows even at the cost of their life, then they would definitely be able to progress along the path and attain the perfect Bodhi. Over here, that's what he meant. Then Maitreya Bodhisattva continued to ask the Buddha, saying that, World-honored one, the Bodhisattvas at the end of 500-year dark age, if they were wanting to attain complete liberation without any afflictions, what are the kinds of Dharma practices they should practice? And then the Buddha replied to Maitreya Bodhisattva. I think Maitreya Bodhisattva asked the question that we all want to know as well, because now we're not living at the time where everything is much better. We are indeed living in the age of degeneration. Look around. There's degeneration of affliction, degeneration of lifespan, and so on. At the end of 500-year dark age, how can we attain liberation? How can we fully pacify all our afflictions? What are the kinds of practices the bodhisattvas should adapt? Then the Buddha replied to Maitreya Bodhisattva, saying, Maitreya, at the end of 500-year dark age, the bodhisattvas should practice the 4 types of dharmas so that they can attain full liberation from their afflictions, and they will be able to find comfort. And what are the 4 types of dharmas? Over here, the 5 kinds of dharma practices are: the first one is that the practitioner should not seek flaws in any sentient beings. That means we should not search for any kinds of flaws and mistakes in anybody. According to the Tibetan version, it's a little bit different, but according to the 2 Chinese translations, they all said that one should not seek faults in sentient beings. I think indeed this is a good practice to adapt. And no matter what kind of sentient beings they are, let them be very noble, let them be endowed with wealth and with great practice, insights, with great fame, we should not try to seek for their mistakes. Nor should we seek for the mistakes and flaws in the inferior beings. There are beings that we don't like at all, and it's very natural for us to wanting to seek for their flaws, but this is inappropriate as well. Especially since we cannot understand or see their inner insights and practices and their realizations from their appearances, we cannot tell which sentient being has inner full enlightenment. Sometimes we would think that certain beings are quite inferior, but maybe they are the manifestation of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So we should not think lowly of the others at all. According to the Sutras and Shastras, even some of the very inferior people that we sometimes would consider them, or people of low social classes, for example, the butchers and prostitutes, but we should not look down at them. We should not think that, oh, this is the person that kills cows every day. This is a person that kills living beings every day. So this person must be very inferior. But there are beings who are the manifestation of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Therefore, to the inferior beings, we should not seek for their faults. Or any sentient beings, we should not seek for their mistakes at all, because everyone has a Buddha nature. That's the first one. And the second one is that if one were to see bodhisattvas made any mistakes, we should not report it to the public. according to the aspiration to be reborn in Pure Land, where it says that if one were to slander the Bodhisattvas, then such kind of negative karmic retribution would be even worse than killing the sentient beings of the three realms. Therefore, we should not make unnecessary negative karma to create such an unnecessary negative karma that is very difficult to confess. Because it's very difficult to say who's bodhisattva and who's not. There are beings who look quite inferior, but we should know that bodhisattvas are great actors and actresses. Also, on top of that, if there are beings who had made the aspiration of bodhicitta, then from the action and in terms of the practice, we can call them bodhisattvas. I think we know that from the text of Bodhisattva Charivatara, and for those one of you who studied it, you're very certain of that. Therefore, whenever we see the bodhisattvas had violated the rules or made any mistakes or have any flaws, we should not then expose it to the public. This is quite important. Let them be monastics or let them be lay practitioners. Especially, I think nowadays that people are very much into seeking flaws in other people, and this kind of actions is not appropriate and not in accord with the Dharma. Unless, of course, if you're the management, if you're managing the whole Sangha, sometimes they would have to speak up. But if you're not really like that, then it's not necessary for you to speak up about others' mistakes. Sometimes whenever I go to a center, I would pay attention to what people talk about in that center. If people in that center talks only about mistakes of the others, then I know people from that center do not practice well. Because it is very much related to ourselves, to our mind. If our minds are pure, then the land is pure. Therefore, if we do not have pure land, then wherever we go, we will be able to see the flaws of the others. So that's just look at Devadatta, who can even find faults in Shakyamuni Buddha, who is perfect. Well, then we should definitely look at our own mind, because if we want to attain any achievements, and if we want to attain liberation, we should not seek for the faults of the sentient beings. Even if you see anything, you should not expose it. This is taught in the Sutra. When Ponzo Rinpoche was giving the teaching, he was also giving the teaching on the Sutra on 100 karmic stories. I believe lots of our Sangha members or our senior Sangha members were there, and because of that teaching by Ponzo Rinpoche, everyone was very careful, especially people do not dare to give any nicknames to the others. But for people who had never studied and contemplated thoroughly and with system, then I believe they do not understand it and they do not uptake this kind of careful view on karma. There was once I listened to a Buddhism seminar, and there were some so-called great masters who were talking to each other and calling each other big nose and blind man. They were making nicknames for each other. And when I listened to that, I'm not sure if I should make any comments on that. I'm not sure how long I can keep my mouth shut, but I'm trying to right now. If I can keep my mouth shut to talk about others' mistakes, then I think that would be good. I know I don't have to talk about other people's mistakes because I can live without talking about the others. I can eat and then live, and it doesn't really make much of a difference in my life. But maybe because of people's previous karma and habitual patterns, whenever I talk about mistakes and flaws of the others, I see that people get more interested, and all of you are getting more focused, and I also feel really happy. Therefore, I think we're really creating negative karma together. Then the third one is that one should not generate grasping towards one's kings and benefactors. Let it be to your relatives and friends and family members, or to the benefactors who had made lots of offering to you. You should not generate any grasping. On one hand, we should not be on the other extreme, that we just do not care about our friends and family members. Of course, as a human being, if others are treating us well with great kindness, we should also repay them with great kindness. However, we should not treat them as the object of great grasping, because if we were to do so, then slowly your benefactors or your family and friends then would be fettered to you, and they will not be able to gain liberation. Therefore, in the Theravada traditions, the Buddhists would pay the kindness of their benefactors and their family and friends with dedication of merit. This is quite important. Of course, if others make offerings to you, or if your family members are really kind to you, you don't have to be stone cold to them. This is not good. Sometimes when I think about my life, throughout lots of life events and the practices, whatever things I encounter in my life, the family members and the relatives, indeed, they were very important to me. So throughout your practice or throughout your life, the relatives and friends would be there along your sides, and this is not easy. But if you were to grasp on them too much, then it would definitely create obstacles towards liberation. According to the praises of the actions of Buddha, it says that just like how a bee would fly to each flowers and pollinate, but they would not harm the flowers at all. So when the bhikshu is begging for alms, they should not harm the mind of the others. Look at the bees. They do not prefer one beautiful flower than the other. In fact, they have great equanimity. They would take, would take whichever flower that they should, and they accept whatever they need. And they give whenever they need. So this is the third one, that one should not generate a great grasping towards the kins and the benefactors. But of course, I understand if you don't grasp at all, that would be difficult. But at least you should not grasp too much, because then it would definitely create obstacles towards your liberation. So the fourth one is to eradicate all coarse language. We should try to speak gentle language. We should try to speak kind language to the others. And we should try to speak the words of warmth. It is said that the speech of loving kindness can warm up the coldest winter. So it is quite important to bring the others warmth and kindness. According to the Sutra of upholding the 10 virtuous precepts, there is nothing more fragrant than the speech of loving kindness, even among the celestial beings, and there is nothing that is more foul than the foul mouth in the three realms. Well, the most fragrant and most foul can be both speech. There are the ones who would harm the others with the foul mouth and with their words that's full of harm. And the wounds that's created by language and by speech can last for a long period of time and can wound one for a long period of time. According to a sutra of repaying great kindness, it says that there was once a Buddha and a young bhikshu at the time. This young bhikshu, who was a Tripitaka master and was quite a great learned master. Also, he had very dignified appearance as well. On the other hand, there was also an arhat who doesn't have great appearances and was quite old at the time. But this old monk really enjoyed praising the three jewels. However, his voice doesn't sound good. The young bhikshu, upon hearing the voice of the old monk, he said that, well, your sound is worse than the barks of a dog. And because of such language, this bhikshu were born for 500 years as a dog. Later, I remember that the old bhikshu also demonstrated his miraculous powers, and the young bhikshu made a confession, but because of his confession, he was born as an animal and was not born in hell realm. The Buddha also stated in the sutra saying that even if there are hot iron plates that's spinning on top of my head, I will not speak anything evil. Well, this is in fact quite difficult to do. We should contemplate upon that. We should also make a vow. Let's make a vow within a year, and we should not speak anything evil to people around you. We should not speak anything harmful to the others. Look at the sutra, where it states that even if the hot iron plates are spinning on top of my head, I shall not speak anything evil. Well, I think nowadays, if people started to get harmed by the others, even just a little bit, then they cannot they cannot bear any of those kind of suffering, and then they would start to swear and start speaking of the harmful words. The genuine and good practitioners, in fact, they're not born as good practitioners. They became good practitioners after studying contemplation and practice, because after studying the Mahayana Buddhism, they generated great insights and great understanding, and then they make great resolve to make different changes. This kind of resolve is really important. What's the difference between a bodhisattva and a mundane being? The mundane beings like us, whenever we just listen to some teachings, people feel people feel really touched, and some of them would even tear up and would wail. But later on, it is as if they've never heard any of those teachings. They don't even have the power to control themselves for as short as 1 minute. Nowadays, I feel that it would rather be better if people are a little bit slower. Because if people are too sensitive and people are too sharp, then it seems that they're debating with everyone at all times, and they get hurt all the time, and they would argue with others all the time. Sometimes I think people would stand at the crossroads and look at their neighbors arguing. In Tibet, we say that whenever it is the time for the couples to argue, usually the women would win, and whenever in a family, there are domestic fightings, then the man would win. Many people would engage in such kind of quarreling nowadays. Not only in real life, there are specific forums online to provide opportunities for people to quarrel with each other. There are lots of opportunities for each other to study different foul language. When I was still in middle school, I remember that there are students who would go to the construction sites and learn foul language from the construction workers back then, and then they would bring back that kind of knowledge back into our classroom and use them in the classroom and talk about the pith instructions of cursing each other. This kind of habitual patterns is really not good. Look at Buddha saying that one should vow to eradicate foul language. And then he continued to say that in the 500-year dark age, at the time when the Dharma is going into decline, if one were to practice these four dharmas, then the Bodhisattvas would definitely enjoy great peace and comfort without vexation and attain great liberation. Over here, then the Buddha spoke in verses, but in the Tibetan translation, there's no verses written that's repeating the previous stated. However, in both of the Chinese translations, there are. So over here, the Buddha just simply repeated, saying that not to seek others' flaws and not to expose others' faults, not to speak the foul speech, and such person shall attain liberation. Maitreya, if the Bodhisattvas at the end of 500-year dark age, if they can attain this kind of four dharmas, if they can practice in these four ways, they will be able to attain liberation without vexation. What are these four then? Then the Buddha continued to speak of another four dharma practices. Through these 8 kinds of practices, then the Bodhisattvas will be able to attain liberation without vexation. The first one is not to get close to the ones who are indolent. According to the Tibetan version, it's instead of indolent, it means rather the ones who do not listen and contemplate in terms of knowledge. The Sui dynasty translation is a little bit different as well. So the first one is that let them be the indolent ones or the ones who are who do not enjoy knowledge and who do not spend a lot of time in terms of studying contemplation. And those are the group of people to avoid, which means that you should be very careful with the kind of crowd you get close to. The second one is to abandon distraction. Did we study this version before? Yes. Well, I remember that distraction was the term that I studied in Chinese back then. Is it the same version? Are you sure? Well, very good, old monk. You still carry the 1997 version of the text. You still keep them. Very good. 1997. Very good. It's considered as an antique. And you can probably sell it for 200,000. Whenever your life's getting very difficult, you can sell it. I think he's the kind of person who really keep track of all of his stuff. That's very good. It really shows a sense of steadiness in his mind, and it's really important. Anyhow, at the time when I was giving teachings on this sutra and translating for it, this is the first time that I get to know what distraction or how to use the word distraction in Chinese. Anyhow, over here it means the ones who are quite adolescent, which is similar to the previous one, and then the ones who really enjoy distraction and entertainment. According to the sutra, in the Agama Sutra, it says that the wise one usually would stay with the wise, and the virtuous ones would stay with the virtuous. So there are people who really enjoy entertainment and distraction, then those are the group of people that we should distance ourselves from. Whenever we look at people, if they do not talk about a practice, if they do not talk about studying and contemplation, and all of their action and speech is about meaningless things, then those are the group of people we should distance ourselves. The third one is one should stay in the quiet place and practice diligently. If you have some quiet places that you can stay in and practice, that would be really wonderful. If you don't have such opportunity or don't have such kind of environment, then it would be good to close your doors and turn off your phone and then just read. The lamas and dromos, the Tibetan lamas and dromos, if they are in the institute, they do not use cell phones anymore. But when I look at the Chinese staff members over here, they use lots of cell phones. They spend lots of time on their cell phone and in public as well. Just like how the Tibetans would wear a koro, they would wear cell phones on their neck, which doesn't look good at all. I think our practitioners over here, you really don't know what it means by when you roam, do what Romans do. When Panzo Rinpoche was still with us, he never stopped us. He would stop the monastics from wearing pants, especially the seniors. It actually looks really bad, especially the seniors who would wear their robe skirts very high and leave their pants outside. It doesn't look good at all. It doesn't look very dignified. If you really have to wear something underneath your skirt, then you can wear rather a thick skirt rather than a very thin skirt and then very thick pants. It doesn't look very dignified as a monastic. Because according to the Tibetan tradition, we would say that whenever a monastic is about to derobe, they would review their pants underneath their skirts. So this kind of dress code is really not appropriate. It's not really in accordance to the Dharma, and it doesn't look very dignified. I really hope that the Khenpos and Khenmos, especially teaching the classes on Pure Land and the practitioners' classes where the seniors are attending mostly, then I really hope that you can pacify your mind at the same time to dignify your actions and your appearances. Anyhow, I'm not sure how I get really distracted and sidetracked. What it means over here in this verse means that it would be the best to find a peaceful and a calm place to practice. But of course, those actions should also be dignified as well. Next one is that one should tame one's mind with skillful means. So one should tame the mind that is like a wild elephant. Use all kinds of methods. You can tame your mind through listening and contemplation the Dharma, and you should practice Ngon Chungjo or bodhicitta, or practice by volunteer and serve the others to tame your own mind. Anyhow, this is your own body and mind. Do not trust your ego too much, because your dualistic mind is not trustworthy, but you should try your best to tame your mind. This is the fourth practice. The Buddha then told Maitreya Bodhisattva, saying that the Bodhisattva in the 500-year dark age, at the time when Dharma is about to decline or is declining, these are the four kinds of practices. If one can attain or achieve these four kinds of dharmas, then the Bodhisattva can gain comfort without vexation and attain liberation. And then again, the Chinese version repeated the teaching with the verses, but it's not included in the Tibetan version again. The verses over here is not exactly the same as the passage that's written over here, but the verses doesn't really necessarily have to be the same. Look at the Sigalovada Sutra or the Lotus Sutra. Sometimes the verses are a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. There are situations like such. Anyhow, over here it means that it says that one should abandon indolence. One should distance oneself from distraction, and one should abide in quiet places and practice contentment. This is how the kind of teachings that would lead one to liberation. So these are the 8 kinds of dharmas now, and then the Buddha continued to talk about the 20 other practices. We have to finish the 2 times of the 20 today, otherwise we won't be able to finish. Anyhow, over here, then the world-honored one started to tell Maitreya Bodhisattva, saying, well, Maitreya, if the Bodhisattvas at the 500-year dark age want to alleviate affliction and attain liberation, if they want to pacify all their past karmic obscurations, if they want to attain liberation, then they should practice in the way such as Juntunpa and great masters. They should, for example, abandon or distance themselves from distraction and go to quiet places and practice in quiet forests and caves on a cliff. And one should distance oneself from the ones who are distracted, and from the ones who are indolent, and the ones who are not practitioners, according to the other translation. So indolent, lazy, distracted, and the ones who are fettered by afflictions with deep vexation, those are the kind of people that a practitioner should distance oneself. If you really want to attain liberation, then you should learn from the previous great masters, live in a good environment, stay in a good environment, and distance yourself from the ones who would bring distraction, and distance yourself from the ones who rather have a different interest than you. Otherwise, you would never have the opportunity to attain liberation. Also, you need to observe yourself and not to seek the other's faults, as it is stated before. It is said that one should meditate upon one's own mistake and not to gossip about others' flaws, according to Roots of Truth. That's what it says. And the Buddha continued to say that one should enjoy silence rather than talking too much, rather than gossiping. In fact, I think people who don't like talking, they indeed make less mistakes or negative karma. There are people who are very eloquent and who loves gossiping, who would say that, well, wait a minute, I want to talk to you about this. I have a really wonderful thing to tell you. But because they talk too much, there are people who don't really want to listen to them, and they probably don't have time to listen to them at all. They really bother the others. So over here, you can see that the Buddha also thinks that it would be the best to abide in silence. and enjoy stopping speech. I notice our practitioners like to wear a little pin where it says that no speech. But nowadays, less and less people would wear that. Well, it's fine if you don't wear that pin, but as long as you can control your speech. Lots of the people who would practice in retreats. There are the ones who would practice for 9 years without speech at all. There are people like that. In the traditional Jonampas, they would practice the 6 yogas for 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days. And the Nimama practitioners sometimes would also do that. And they would stay in retreats without speaking at all. And I really admire that. Some people told me that I won't be able to do so because I really enjoy having meetings. But I think I would be able to do that. It's just that I'm forced to have lots of meetings. The other day, I told Khenpo Tsochum Lojo, I said, well, I have to get into retreat. He said, well, then can you maybe get into retreat in the winter because it's difficult right now. You have to attend lots of meetings. Well, I think lots of the times it's still that I can't let it go. In fact, I think even if I let go completely, the world is not going to collapse. But thinking about a 3-year, 3-month, and a 3 days retreat, I'm not sure if this is the time yet. Maybe it's not the time right now. But if I can have a true retreat, that would be great. So I truly encourage the ones who have the capacity to take over my job so that I can take my retreats for 3 years and 3 months and 3 days, because I've spent my whole life working. It's probably time for me to get into retreats. Well, if it is just like what the Kadampas say, or like the African people do. They sometimes would lock someone up, and the ones who would be in retreat with a lock, and you can open up the lock when it's time for food, and after a meal you can just gargle your mouth and then lock it up. This is really wonderful. The Buddha then continued to say that one should practice diligently on the Prajnaparamita and uphold the actions that is in accordance with the Prajnaparamita. If one were to benefit the sentient beings, and if one were to generate compassion and the mind of benefit, then you should practice in such a way. You should give teaching of the Dharma with no hidden agenda, with no requirement for payback. Because when one wants to gain benefit from the sentient beings and then give the Dharma teachings, it is not beneficial to oneself nor the others. According to the Sutra, it says that if one wants to gain benefit to give teachings to the crowd, because one has a hidden agenda to gain worldly benefit, then such Dharma teaching is harmful as well. The Buddha continued to tell Maitreya Bodhisattva, saying that if the Bodhisattva does not have any hope while practicing generosity, do not grasp onto the benefits of fame and gain, but purely out of compassion, purely out of the mind of benefiting the others to give teachings to the sentient beings, then this person would be able to gain the 20 different kinds of merits. In fact, over here it says that though the 20 merits are gained through giving the teaching, but according to Phuntsog Rinpoche, the 20 kinds of merits are gained by both the teacher and the listener. Now let us look at the first out of the 20 benefits or merits. The first one is accomplishment of right mindfulness. Let it be giving teachings or listening to the Dharma teachings, one will not lose their right mindfulness. So this is accomplishment of right mindfulness. Indeed, I think the ones who listen and give teaching of the Dharma are very different. And look at us as practitioners. Sometimes we may forget about we may lose that right mindfulness, but when we remember it, we'll be able to get back to it right away. And the second one is accomplishment of wisdom. The ones who give teachings and listening to the teachings of the Dharma, they have to study. Look at us recently. I know that everyone's studying and preparing for exams. So everyone's very diligent. And then the supervisors over here of the Sangha, they said that, during the month of preparation for exams in Larungar, they don't really have much of the job because majority of people are doing very well because they're diligently studying. This is quite amazing because this is also a way of, it also shows that at the dark age, we still have these methods to study the Dharma, and through these ways, we're still able to immerse the Dharma into our mind. This is quite important to develop wisdom. The third one is perseverance. Again, if you listen and give teaching on the Dharma, you have to have perseverance. If you don't have that, then after a day or two, you'll go back to your original state. The fourth one is abiding in pure action. So the action would definitely be pure, other than the very deep karmic obscuration. But other than that, I think majority of people would practice pure action in their daily life if they practice the Dharma. The fifth one is to generate insights, and the sixth one is to gain the wisdom of transmundane or the ultimate wisdom. This kind of wisdom is really important. The worldly wisdom is spontaneously reason, and what's more important is transmundane wisdom and the wisdom of liberation. And the seventh one is not to be harmed by the maras. Let be the 4 maras or 84,000 maras. In fact, the ones who's giving to the teaching and giving the Dharma teaching and listening to the teaching, they will not be disturbed by the maras. I indeed feel very deeply about this, because whenever it's time for me not to give teachings, it's a little bit difficult for me to be certain of myself. And then the next one, the 10th one, is distant oneself from ignorance, and the 11th one is blessings from Buddhas. In fact, when you're listening or giving teaching of the Dharma, the Buddha will constantly give you blessings, same as the deity and guru. I myself have a very deep experience in this, because I feel that whenever I give teachings, my dreams are very different, because when I don't give teachings, my dreams are rather quite murky, but when I give teachings, especially teachings of esoteric, of the tantric teachings, I feel my dreams are even better. But in the Mahayana teachings, usually the dreams are very good as well. For example, this morning I also dreamt of a dream of Hiragriva. This is a very good dream, so I'm not telling you right now, but I wrote it in my journal. After I die, I will publish this journal, and then by that time you know that I had lots of bad dreams and good dreams. I had lots of deep faith towards the Hiragriva. When I was giving teachings on Wangdu, I remember that I talked about it because my father really likes horse, and there was one of my neighbors who's a lama. He also likes horse, and he told me that if I were to chant the mantra of Hiragriva, then it would be the best to protect the horses. So in order to please my father, I would chisel the mantra of Hiragriva onto the rock, and maybe because I practice this mantra, the horses at my home is very good, and everyone's very envious of us. So I have lots of faith towards Hiragriva. This is the mantra.
观音菩萨的这个焚炉像红观音的，
In fact, here Griva is the wrathful form of red Avalokiteshvara or Amitabha. If you were to practice here Griva, then you will naturally pacify the natural calamities and disasters and pandemic, and you will be able to pacify all the obstacles in your life, and you will be able to receive lots of capacity in your mind. So this is the mantra. Do you know how to chant this? My neighbor, when I was young, Lama Lodro, who at the time also really liked the horse, and he would chant this all the time. He would use his mala and chant this mantra. A few of us who would follow him would also chant this. Sometimes we would secretly stick some cow dung on his hair, and he would get angry. But then we would pretend that we're just chanting the mantra, and nobody did that. So we would prank him in such a way. Anyhow, over here it says that one would be protected by the Buddhas or blessed by the Buddhas. The 12th one is being protected by the non-humans. Some of the spirits and ghosts and the non-humans would protect the ones who give teachings and listening to the Dharma. Also, the 13th is they will receive the blessings from immeasurable celestial beings. The ones who listen to the Dharma and giving teachings on the Dharma, you can see that they have better health and they look better even. It feels that the celestial beings are giving them makeups maybe. The next one says that the relatives and the kins will not be able to destroy them or harm them. Sometimes when we listen to classes, usually we can see that we don't really get disturbed by our relatives. There are times that you really want to get away from your relatives. Even if you turn off your cell phones, you can't stop them. But if you listen to the Dharma, at least you should tell them that I'm listening to the class, so you should not disturb me. And then they won't. Now the 16th one is that the 15th is that whatever you speak, people would believe it. And the 16th is that your foes will not create problems. 17th, you will be able to attain fearlessness. 18th is constantly abiding in the state of happiness. The ones who give teachings and the ones who listen to the teachings are constantly abiding in the state of happiness. The 19th, the ones who listen and give teachings of the Dharma are praised by the wise ones, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, as well as all the wise men, the noblemen, the teachers, the masters would pay great praise. Next one is that one will be able to be very eloquent in terms of teaching or giving teaching the Dharma. The beings would, the sentient beings or crowds would also be very reverent. When you give teachings of the Dharma, for example, I noticed lots of the students would say that my Khenpo said so and so. But I think people are quite let's say opportunists sometimes, because after they don't teach anymore, they don't really make any offerings anymore. So these are the 20 benefits. The Buddha then told Maitreya Bodhisattva, saying that the Bodhisattva will be able to attain the 20 kinds of benefits if one were to give the teachings of the Dharma and listening to the Dharma without the hidden agenda of receiving worldly benefits of fame and benefits. And then 20 other dharmas. It's very easy, so let me finish teaching this part so that we can complete today's teaching. Then the Buddha continued to tell Maitreya Bodhisattva, saying that if the Bodhisattva, without any hope, according to Tibetan version, it says without hope. In my previous translation, I translated it as without the mind of gaining benefits. But over here it says that without hope, without the mind of hoping to receive any gain. But if one were to give the teaching of Dharma, then they will be able to attain the 20 kinds of benefits. So the 20 benefits over here is a little bit different. The previous 20 benefits are similar to the Tibetan version, but over here, this 20, in fact, the previous 20, some of those are different than the Sui Dynasty's translation and the Tibetan translation. There are some differences, but over here, these 20 are exactly the same. So let's look at the first one. The ones who have not developed eloquence will be able to develop eloquence. Even the ones who appear to be rather a little bit slow, they will be able to develop great eloquence. After listening to classes and after studying the Dharma, they would generate some eloquence. Sometimes I feel a little bit Sometimes I would feel a little bit pity because there are people who develop eloquence, but because they do not persevere with listening and contemplation and practice, and then it seems that they've lost the eloquence. There are some couples who were really good at the beginning, but then maybe at the time they didn't really get any opportunity to give teachings, and then they slowly become very slow. I shouldn't speak ill of them. But anyhow, over here it says that they will be able to develop eloquence and they will gain great memory. So look at the ones who practice who would practice the Dharma and who would practice mantras. Over here it says that one would be able to gain the great diligence in Dharani. If we chant and then the third one is without indolence, and the fourth one is even with a little bit of diligence, one can benefit immeasurable sentient beings. Look at our group chanting of Samantabhadra's King of Aspiration. The merit is immeasurable. It would definitely benefit immeasurable number of beings. So I think if we have one class one day and chant those even once a day, that would be of great benefit. Look at Phuntsok Rinpoche when he was at the age of 18-year-old. I think his mother passed away at that time, and before, and he made aspiration in front of the corpse of his mother, saying that I will become a great practitioner in my whole life, and I will not practice the wise actions. And the second vow he made was to give teachings to the sentient beings to benefit them. The third one is to chant the King of Aspiration of Samantabhadra. So whenever we have any Dharma assemblies in our monastery, we would chant the King Aspiration of Samantabhadra. Even if we use a short period of time to give teachings of Dharma, even if it's as short as 2 hours, we can definitely liberate immeasurable sentient beings and benefit them. If we can generate, then the next one is to generate respect and revere. If we give teachings of one class, then everyone would generate great respect. Even at the beginning, they do not believe in you or doesn't have any respect towards you. The next one, which is the sixth one, is pure body. Seventh, pure speech. And eighth is pure mind. So again, this kind of pure precept in terms of body, speech, and mind. And the ninth one is to go beyond of all the lower realms, go beyond all the fears of lower realms. And the 10th one is generate joyfulness at the time of death. Indeed, I think people who listen and contemplate and practice and give teachings of the Dharma, even at the time of death, they would feel very happy. They would feel very free, and they can depart from this world in calm and ease. Someone wrote a note saying that a note to me saying that his relative just passed away, and that the relative passed away in great peace. And I was thinking maybe that was the practitioner, because after listening to the Dharma, indeed, they will be able to pass away in great happiness. The 11th one is to propagate the correct Dharma and destroy the wrong views and wrong speech. And the 12th one is noble in all aspects. There are people who are very noble and very dignified in all kinds of aspects, and people don't dare to slander them or don't dare to sometimes even look at them. It is because they are very dignified. They have lots of power in their presence. So for great practitioners, they would be able to develop that. The 13th is that the practitioners who practice and listen and study and contemplate the Dharma, in fact, they would have great benefits, or they would attain great benefits towards all the roots. For example, there are great practitioners who still have pure roots of eye, ear, mouth, nose, and their body, even at a very senior age. The old compulsed practitioners at the age of 80 or even 100-year-old, they are still very sharp in all their faculties. At 78 years of age, Kampodeba composed a Shastra. He still writes very well at that time. And then at the age of 80, he composed also a Shastra on one of the Tantras. And then we can look at in the Han or in the Chinese tradition, some of the old monks who lived to over 100, their right mindfulness, their capacity, their faculties are still very sharp and clear with great clarity. And those are because of the merit of giving the teaching of the Dharma. Nowadays, I think, however, people do listen to the Dharma, but people spend lots of time on their cell phones. I really think that we should take away the cell phones. On one hand, it's easy to use cell phones to listen to the Dharma classes, but on the other hand, it's very distracting. Sometimes through the help of technology, it's easy to gain benefit, but on the other hand, we should know the distraction and the disruptive effect of cell phones as well. So we should put away our cell phones, at least turn off the cell phones for 2 hours every day. The 14th is that one will be able to generate a supreme mind, to generate the supreme bodhicitta. And the 15th is to gain shamatha as well as vipassana. Through listening and studying of the Dharma, you definitely be able to increase your insights and experiences of shamatha and vipassana. The 16th is one will be able to gain the perfect achievement through the difficult actions. For example, that is to say the 6 paramitas and the practice of such. The 17th is to generate perseverance and diligence. To listen to the Dharma, it's easy to be diligent for 2 or 3 days, but it in fact takes perseverance to study and to give teachings on the Dharma. So we should definitely spend our time in that rather than distractions of the world, such as eating, drinking, and entertainment, and so on. The 18th is to protect both Mahayana and Theravada tradition, as well as all the correct Dharma, the Tibetan Buddhism, the Chinese Buddhism, all of those, the correct Dharma, we should protect them. The 19th is to attain non-retrogress. This is something that we really wish to attain. Otherwise, if we practice really well for today, but then tomorrow you retrogress, that's not good. I remember once that we went to Mount Wutai, there was one Khenpo who was very tall. Back then, he was very young. There was a young monk who lost the hat and sometimes lost the socks, and he would say that, oh, I lost this and I lost that. I think our practices are like that too. Sometimes we practice one day and then we retrogress for another. And then at the end we don't gain anything. This is quite a pity. So over here, if we can listen and practice and give teachings of the Dharma, we'll be able to gain the fruition of non-retrogress. And this is the 19th, and the 20th is comply with all actions and abide in the action of the Bodhisattvas. The 20th is that one will be able to practice in comply with the actions of Mahayana Bodhisattvas. Wouldn't that be great? Because as mundane beings, we are full of selfishness, and sometimes our actions are carried away to harm the sentient beings, and then the karmic retribution would be quite harmful or quite horrifying as well. So these are the 20 benefits that we will gain through teaching and listening to the Dharma. This time, I do feel that the fellow practitioners are very active in seeking for the Dharma. However, I'm not sure about the other people. In fact, lots of people are not really active in seeking to the right Dharma anymore. Let it be listening to the Dharma or the Dharma assemblies. And I definitely feel there is a decline or a degeneration in terms of that. There are people who would use the excuses of this pandemic, and they would say no to all the positive things that they used to do, all the virtuous things that they used to do. you. So I really hope that people can generate this mind of cherishing the Dharma, because now it is even harder than ever before to receive the delicious meal of the Dharma. Not sure how long we will have the time to study and listening to the Dharma. We should cherish the time as much as possible. In fact, the merits, like what we studied over here, we all want to gain this kind of merit. But sometimes if we don't have this opportunity, then it will be very difficult to gain this merit, isn't it? We should realize that everything is impermanent and everything is related to the collective merit and a collective karma. And we should not blame on the others. We should not have a sense of despair. Over here, I really wish that everyone over here should study and try to familiarize yourself with these teachings again and again so that you won't forget about it. The Buddha then told Maitreya Bodhisattva, saying that as a Bodhisattva, if you were wanting to attain these 20 benefits, let you be listening to the Dharma, giving to the Dharma, then you should not grasp onto fame and benefits as the fruition, but to generate the mind of benefiting sentient beings. In this way, you'll be able to gain the 20 benefits.
后天没有课，然后星期四和星期五照样有课。所能得以探测这半年，同那你别扎那攀涉，今个那几日弄这把，这本从年着啊着。